welcome to CPJ's fifth annual Juvenile Justice Convening, partnering with parents, equipping communities to partner with families for the flourishing of the justice-involved youth. My name is Maddie Allen, and I am the Advocacy Manager at the Center for Public Justice. We're just going to get started today. Please join me with prayer as we begin. This prayer that I'll be praying is written by Rachel Britton and is considered a prayer for justice. Lord, you are our rock. When we want to make right what is wrong, help us to remember you do too, that you care about injustice. Thank you for being our rock, that your works are perfect and all your ways are just. We can depend on you when fairness seems a long way off. Teach us to bring our hurt, anger, and resentment to you. But God, we ask you to step in and make wrongs right. We trust you to act on your children's behalf because there is no one holy like you. Our hearts will rejoice because you make us strong. You will give us an answer. You will bring dignity, honor, and justice. Amen. Well, for those of you who've just joined us, welcome again to CPJ's 5th Annual Juvenile Justice Convening. We are so thankful that you've been able to join us today and learn from faith leaders and practitioners who are fighting for justice for the youth in their communities and helping support families so that whole neighborhoods are able to flourish. Just a couple quick reminders as people are joining. If you do not see your name on your Zoom, please try to name yourself so that we can know what your name is, especially when we're submitting questions later. We'd love to be able to know who you are. And also feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining us from today. It's so great to be able to see people gather from all across the United States because of their care for the children in their communities. So we would love to see all the different states and cities represented today. The Center for Public Justice is a civics, education, and public policy organization that has a mission to equip citizens, develop leaders, and shape policy, all in pursuit of the goal to serve God, advance justice, and transform public life. The Center for Public Justice works outside of the familiar categories of right and left, conservative and liberal. We are a Christian, nonpartisan organization seeking to help citizens and public office holders respond to God's call to do justice. For the last 9 years, juvenile justice has been a key public policy issue for CPJ. In 2015, CPJ CEO Stephanie Summers wrote Unleashing Opportunity: Why Escaping Poverty Requires a Shared Vision of Justice. She wrote this book in tandem with Michael Gershon and Katie Thompson, who were also CPJ staff and fellows. They wrote this book wanting to explore 5 key issues that have a major impact on low-income families in America. One of those key issues was juvenile justice reform. That book was the beginning point for our passion for this massive issue in the United States. Our care for children and families caused us to be very concerned about the brokenness in our justice system. In the years following the release of this book, CPJ has partnered with churches and faith-based organizations to gather advocates, policymakers, and religious leaders from all over the country to talk about core issues in the juvenile justice system and discuss evidence-based intervention methods to divert children from the justice system. The brokenness in our justice system is complex, and the dynamics of families and communities and neighborhoods can be even more complex. There is no one solution to the imprisonment of our children. Instead, we must address the many facets of this issue. In previous convenings, we have discussed probation reform, best practices in diversion programs, how churches can partner with the government, and how faith communities can be engaged in advocacy, both on a legislative and administrative level. Today, we're going to discuss another facet of juvenile justice: the role of parental engagement. The flourishing of youth is often intrinsically linked to the flourishing of the family. It is critical, therefore, that families of justice-involved or potentially justice-involved youth receive the resources and support necessary to traverse the juvenile justice system well. This convening really is going to be aimed at examining the ways in which communities, including nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, houses of worship, and many others, can best engage with and provide support for families before and during involvement in the juvenile justice system. We will not only examine families who have been involved in the justice system, but also think through how parental engagement can completely divert families from ever having to be involved with the justice system to begin with. Thinking about supporting families often means actually thinking about supporting college students, teenagers, young adults, because they are just in the beginning stages of their family in many ways. If we think about education, resources around financial literacy, if we think about access to healthcare, all of these things actually impact juvenile justice, just on a level that we don't typically think of. So today we're gonna have that conversation and think about how juvenile justice has been impacted by the lack of parental engagement, or from the ways that parents have been kept from transparency in the justice system. So our basic agenda for this call today will be two different panels. Our first panel will focus on how advocates can support parental engagement in justice-involved families. The second panel will focus on how faith leaders can support restorative justice by engaging with parents. In between those panels, we will have a brief interview where we'll be able to hear a story of success of a method known as 2GEN, which thinks about how to serve children and parents simultaneously, instead of seeing them as separate groups whose needs have to be met separately. After each of our panels and that interview, we will have an opportunity for questions from the audience. So make sure that you save all your questions and put them in the chat during that time so that we can hear from you all as well. So with that, let's get started with our very first panel. Our first panel is titled Tools of the Trade, Equipping to Engage with Parents of Justice-Involved Youth. Our panel today will be moderated by Garrett Ellis. We'll drop the link to all of our speakers' bio sheet so that you can read their extensive experience that they bring to this conversation, and our moderator as well. On our panel, though, in addition to Garrett, who's moderating, is Arthur Markland, Nydia McCurry, and Richard Ramos. To start with a brief bio from each of them, Arthur is a parent coach at Community Connections for Youth. Arthur is a native of Bronx and experienced firsthand what it looks like to be an advocate for fair treatment and special services for families. Next, Richard Ramos has a devoted career to serving high-risk youth and families. He's recognized as a national and international expert on preventing youth violence, and he is the author of From the Margins to the Mainstream, Preparing Latino Youth for Leadership in the 21st Century, as well as Parents on a Mission, How Parents Can Win the Competition for the Heart, Mind, and Loyalty of Their Children. Nydia McCurry serves as the Chief Program Officer for Agape Child and Family Services, where she leads initiatives to support children and families in need. So with that, I would just like everyone to welcome our panel and speakers today, and I will turn it over to Garrett.
Thanks, Maddie. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks to each of you on this panel for being willing to talk and share your experiences and wisdom with us. I want to start by first just asking if each of you could tell us a little bit about how you first became involved in the juvenile justice space and in that conversation in your work and in your life experiences. Could you share on that?
Sure, I will get started. My name is Nydia McMurray, and as was stated, I'm Chief Program Officer with Agape Child and Family Services in Memphis, Tennessee. And I would say that I first became involved in the juvenile justice system as a young child. Getting the awareness was developed early on by my parents with different programs they were involved with that advocated for equality for youth during their time. And then I spent 24 and a half years in education and led a school that was 95% of students were economically disadvantaged. 65% of those students came from households that only spoke Spanish, and 20% were students labeled as disabled or had some kind of disability. And advocating early on for equity, equal accommodations for them to be set up for success on state testing. Those students that were thought to be underprivileged, being exposed to project-based learning and STEM curriculum was something that was not common for students not labeled as gifted. So even advocating for those that could not advocate or not know what to advocate for themselves started there. And then moving on to where I am now as Chief Program Officer with Agape, being able to still advocate for those who are in poverty and who need a voice and need a way out. And this has allowed me to follow my passion along with my desire to see the city thrive, to make a bigger impact.
You're on mute, Arthur. You're on mute. Sorry about that. My name is Arthur Markland. I am with Community Connections for Youth, Bronx, New York. I was first introduced to the juvenile. Well, let me just backtrack and say that I've had my challenges as an adult, a young adult, with the criminal justice system. And the only reason I bring that up is because I had some familiarity with the way the system worked. I have daughters, and as they got into their teenage years, they started to get into some trouble. I was there to support them as they were going through the juvenile justice system. And just to give you a little backstory, and mine is, I'm going to try to be brief. My daughter is actually, my situation is actually a success story where my daughter was involved or associated with young people that had been assaulted another teenager. And during that assault, she had, the judge asked, ordered an ACD and a program. The program happened to be Community Connections for Youth. As a father, I supported the process, and the program was very loving. And during this process, my daughter, for some reason, a light bulb went off in her head, and she decided she didn't want to go through this system anymore. She asked me, Dad, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. How can we turn things around? I said, just do what you got to do in school, and I will support you. And during that time, that was in 2014, where Ruben, Austria, came up with this parent support program. And my daughter did such a turnaround where she joined a cheerleading team, and she was head cheerleader. And then when she graduated from school, and she went on to college, and now she's with FDNY as an EMT. So I was very fortunate. But during this process, Mr. Austria had came over to me and said, hey, we're getting ready to develop this parent support program. What did you do to support your daughter? I said, I was just being what a parent should do, just being very supportive. And when he launched the program, they asked me to come aboard. That's how I got involved.
Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Ramos. I'm the founder and author of Parents on a Mission. Growing up in Northeast Los Angeles, that would probably be the beginning of being around people that were in and out of prison when I was a young kid. But more to the point, I worked in 2 prisons here in California. I transferred from there to a juvenile hall, worked in juvenile hall for a few years, and then from there to my church ministry and being an at-risk counselor at a junior high school, doing outreach in the streets, working with gang members and trying to help them, kids that were coming out of juvenile hall. And also I had 50 of the worst kids on my caseload as an at-risk counselor. So that I've been involved with at-risk youth for many, many years, until one day, as an at-risk counselor, I decided I needed to do home visits so that I could hear from the parents and not just hear from their kids. that's when things changed for me, and I realized I was fighting a losing battle because everything I was doing with my students, building them up, was being torn down at home. And that's when I went from a youth mentor to a parent mentor, which is what I do now. And I suppose that we'll get into that more in this discussion. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Richard, you kind of jumped the ball on my second question. I wanted to circle to Arthur, your experience as a parent coach, and then everyone else on this panel, feel free to jump in on this as well. In your experiences and in your work, sort of a two-part question. First, in your experiences, what do you find are the biggest tools that caregivers and parents need when their child becomes justice involved? And sort of on the flip side, what are some of the biggest barriers that prevent caregivers and parents from successfully walking with their children through the justice system? So Arthur, if you could talk a little bit maybe about your work as a parent coach, but then everyone else feel free to jump in on that as well.
As a parent coach, what I've found is that information is key. A lot of parents that come into family court that are not familiar with the process are emotional, and rightly so. I have had experience with parents in the past that have gotten so emotional that they didn't carry themselves in a professional manner. And that would be, and I'm going to take this question backwards, that would be the significant barrier to a person not being able to walk through the system. Because if you're not coached or you're not given the information as to how the system works, you will feel that corporation counsel or prosecution is out to get your child when they have a job to do. Their job is to find out as much information to put that person to remand that person or find justice. That's what they're doing. The defense, on the other hand, is trying to find ways to have that person brought back home. So they take it personal. And I've had parents that didn't carry themselves in a professional manner and they got banned from the courtroom. And it got so bad. One case was so bad where when they spoke to the defense attorney, and the defense attorney, they were asking the defense attorney questions, and the defense attorney told them, legally, I do not have to speak to you. I am your child's attorney. So you can speak with the parent coach or you can speak with your child directly. These are some of the things that will prevent a person from being able to walk through this process. However, on the flip side, we have had parents that had gotten some information and knew that the best thing they could do is give information when asked. Do not get emotional. Allow the process to go on, because in family court, the courts are now geared towards keeping the child home with their biological parents. They really are. Criminal court is a different animal altogether, but family court and juvenile court, they really are geared toward keeping that child in the community and at home. So you gotta just be able to have the information to know exactly how to conduct yourself.
Nadia, do you want to comment?
So what I would say to that, and as we look at the justice system as the CPJ defines it, and Agape, what we do is we help families fight poverty through God and for them to be able to flourish. And we look up several of the tenets that are addressed by CPJ. And one pathway that we take is the economic development piece for them, as well as education. I could say both. And some of the barriers that we're finding that our clients or our families have is trauma, or they come to us from a state of crisis. And being able to tackle that piece and to get them to a state to where they're stabilized enough to receive the support to help move them forward. And so what we find that a lot of our efforts or intention initially comes with stabilizing them in through that crisis. And then from there, we're able to educate them and to provide them with resources to empower them to move themselves from one state to the other. And so that is one of the barriers that we find most often when we first interact with our clients in that space.
All I could add to that, I'm just saying it in a different way. I think the barrier is emotional immaturity by parents. There's just a lot of immaturity, as both these Nadia and Arthur have said. And that's what we do is help them grow, help provide them training in personal growth. I develop people like Arthur, parent coaches, I call them mentors. And I find that's really helpful for the parent to not be so focused on the rebellious behavior of a child, but rather on the things that they need to grow within themselves and focus on themselves and their own anxiousness and things like that.
Yeah, thank you guys. Next question is for anybody. Oftentimes we see diversion programs and youth programming focus a lot on the individual youth, sort of in a vacuum, as it were. But we also know that faith communities and churches and organizations in the community can play a significant role in that process and in the outcomes. So how, again, any of you can speak to this, how can faith communities and churches and the like meaningfully engage with these parents of justice-involved youth in their communities? Or in other words, what does practical support look like for these families impacted by the justice system?
I could start. We approach this issue by separating the families. We have an adult side where we have workshops where parents come together and talk about several issues or that's going on within the home or just in life in general. And in the youth part, they do a lot of community engagement to get the young people to see how giving back and how engaging with this is your community that you live in, right? You don't want to trash it. You don't want to do things to demean it or make other people see it as a demeaning area, right? You want to try and build. So we do things separately. And then sometimes we do come together. We have events where we come together. Last Saturday, matter of fact, we had everybody go to the flip circus. We had 65 RSVPs and it was sold out. And the families came together and enjoyed themselves, right? So we can enjoy time together. We've had workshops where we call breaking bread, where families cook together, put the cell phones down, right? They have a professional cook there that's facilitating, and we go ahead and we have the hot plates or whatever we need and all the ingredients, and everybody cooks together, and it's one big kumbaya. And it really was successful, right? We have the back to school events where it's not just giving out backpacks. We give out backpacks with supplies, but we also have a DJ there. We also have food. We also have raffles and prizes. The whole idea behind this is these are human beings. We're in the business of changing lives, right? Because when you redirect somebody and get them to see what they're doing wasn't right, the magic is to see that person grow and then pay it forward to the next person coming in. So that's how we address, as a community-based organization, that's how we address helping families.
I'll go next. I love what Arthur said about getting the youth involved and taking ownership and being part of their community. One thing that we do with our agency, Agape, is that we utilize a two-generational approach where we not only work with the youth as an individual, but we work with everyone in the household. We term it as cradle and beyond, because what we're able to do is provide wraparound supportive services. And a lot of people on our team. We come with the passion, different expertise, different walks of life. So we found to be able to, for us to make the biggest impact is to take all those talents and implement them through curriculum, through research-based curriculum, so that we can all demonstrate and execute it in one fashion. And particularly with our school-based program, we utilize Check and Connect, where it's designed to bring in the parents and the families for that parental engagement piece, and to, like, you're going to hear me say throughout, being able to inform or educate them about how to stay engaged with their child throughout various walks of their lives, and then still working with the students or the children on behavior interventions to get them to a place before they have to go through a juvenile justice system for criminals. We want to ward that off at the head and start working on interventions before they get there. So that seems to work well for us in getting everyone in the household involved.
First of all, I should apologize for my voice. I was yelling and screaming for the Dodgers last night. So, I'm in California, I grew up in LA, baby. So, they won. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. Um, you know, just the faith-based organizations should know, and I think they do know, that transformation, nobody gets transformation of life like faith-based organizations and leading people to the Lord. That is the upper hand that all faith-based organizations have. And not to say that these other secular programs are not good, they have a place and they're important, etc. But the faith-based organization works from the inside out. I always say, if you had a teenager come to you who was both starving and suffocating at the same time, which need would you meet first? Well, you can't eat or drink if you can't breathe. And there's that internal work that happens in the spiritual world. And once we relieve them of those things, then they can receive from the outside in, but it's got to start from the inside out. Another problem a lot of communities make mistake is everybody wants to help the youth. Everybody wants to help the youth. And so they're focused on the problems that rebellious youth create rather than focusing on the problems that create rebellious youth. And that's why the parents in the home is so important, because where do citizens of the community come from? Citizens of the community go to school. They don't come from school. They go to church. They don't come from church. They go to work. They don't come from work. So where do they come from? They come from the home. Citizens of the community come from the home. And therefore, separating kids and isolating them from their parents and family and trying to fix their issues, justice-involved youth or whatever it might be, that's a mistake. The family is a system, and we have to look at the whole family. And what we're helping parents understand is maybe you're part of the issue here, and wake up to the fact and have the humility to admit maybe you're contributing to the problem here. And so when we look at the family as a system and help parents take that leadership and the proper use of their authority, rather than abdicating their authority to the pastor, the priest, the coach, the soccer coach, and everybody else, maintain your authority, grow in your authority, and understand how your family as a system is reproducing and producing the citizens of the community.
Yeah, thank you guys. That's excellent. Richard, you just touched a little bit on sort of the unique capability of faith-based organizations in this conversation. But could each of you more broadly talk a little bit about what distinguishes the capabilities of organizations like the ones you represent from federal institutions with regards to encouraging parental engagement in the justice system?
I'll start. Federal agencies, in my opinion, look at a case number, and then the name. Whereas we are looking at the person. It's a case-by-case basis, and we are going to assess, and I agree with Richard on some of his points, because we're dealing with people, we're dealing with human beings, right? And they have to breathe first. I agree with you 100%. So you have to assess what's going on in the home. And he's right. In some cases, the parent may be accelerating the issue or be part of the problem in some cases, right? that's not always the case. The young people have so many challenges, and I'm a little old school, so I'm just going to say it. Social media is not always the best thing. I've had a lot of young people that have beef with somebody they don't even know, just based on posts from social media. And I think that's something that, we talk to our young people about. I remind them, you don't own any of this concrete out here, right? You just live there, and hopefully you'll be successful one day when you can say, I own an acre and a mule. But until that time comes, just go ahead and live as a human being and respect one another. We have a lot of animosity that goes on with young people. But again, to go back to that, the agencies, in my opinion, just look at a case number and they don't really deal with the person that is inside. And we address the family. For the single mom that's struggling to try and raise her kids, to try and make ends meet, to be able to get them to school and possibly to college, to want to see their kids successful, the single dad that's doing all he can, or the family as a whole that has some dysfunction going on in there. And we can't solve everything, right? But we go ahead and try to assess what we can, and go ahead, and communication is extremely important. A lot of us are, us included, adults included, we're all on our cell phones. People are texting and this and that. Where's the communication? Where's that gone to? It's a lost art of speaking with one another. And I used to really ask my daughters, what's going on with you? How was school today? You're all right? Anybody bothering you? Do you understand the work that you're getting before you? There's a lot of challenges that are present in every human being. So that's my answer.
Yeah. I would like to say that one thing that distinguishes the capabilities that we have is that, similar to what Arthur was stated, building a rapport early on matters. And a lot of times the parents are reluctant to engage in that initial assessment because of what experiences they've had with federal entities pri previously. They want to make sure that nothing they say will be tracked or impact them in any way. So overcoming that particular communication barrier to build a rapport, to let them know, hey, I'm here to support you, but I have to be able to identify your area of need, or what is the root cause of where we are now. And our agency, we have so many programs that's able to support and wrap around. When we look at some of the parents and we discover that they may have been a victim of domestic violence, well, we have an area, a team that's able to get them transitional housing to escape that situation, so that we can deal with that immediate crisis and begin. Now, let us wrap around, start providing you with counseling that we can start working through with you on how to engage in the process that your child may need you to be present in. And even looking at, if you need workforce development, is employability a problem that's impacting the finances in the home, creating stress that's causing the child to go out and do these types of things. So looking at the need, taking those assessments of where that need lies and the root cause of getting the child to where they may be at that current moment, and identifying it at the root. And I think that's very important for us to make the impact that we're able to make for the parents to be engaged.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what we're emphasizing to families and to parents is that the community does not build your family. The family builds the community. And the same with government and federal agencies. We need their support. The family is not there to support them. We're not building our family to support the school and the hospital and the government agencies. It should be the other way around, where parents understand what you do at your dinner table at night, what you do with your kids when they go to bed at night, what you do, as Arthur mentioned, when they come home from school, and the attachment that you're creating with them. That's what builds the community. As I said earlier, The question is, what kind of citizen are we sending into the community every day? Because the school and your neighbors and the teachers and the policemen, they're depending on us as mom and dad to send kids to the community who know how to respect authority, get along with other people, be respectful of everybody, et cetera, especially in the diverse world that we live in. So what separates the family from federal agencies is that we are the foundation of society, the foundation of the community, and not the other way around. We're not trying to support them. They need to be supporting the family. And when parents understand that, you are raising the citizens of the community, and safe neighborhoods depend upon parents who do that. And as Arthur said, it's not true in every case with parents. There's a lot of great parents out there. So it's, you know, so you could have great parents and your kids turn out wrong, or you could have terrible parents and the kids turn out right. That's true. But for the most part, what goes on in that home, that's going to reflect in the larger community.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Nadia, you touched on this a little bit, and Richard as well. With Richard, I know you work with parents on a mission. You know, that's sort of tying into this next question. We've discussed already here some of the challenges parents and caregivers face when they're caring for youth that have become involved with the justice system. But in your experience, and any of you in your experiences, what particular challenges do you face when you're engaging with these parents and these families of justice-involved youth? Can you guys speak to that?
Yes, I can speak to that. Particularly, we know, as I stated early on, we typically get them when they're in a point of crisis and a point of breaking, and being able to stabilize that, helping them to navigate through that trauma. And then we began to find that social capital matters. The lack of resources or knowing who to help or go to when you need, when you're find your state in this need, find yourself in this state of need. And sometimes, because we work with individuals in poverty, they're not exposed to a lot of the resources or the mentors or the people that can help them navigate through certain spaces. So we do, and we actually call our client-facing team members connectors, because in addition to supporting them through that, we're connecting them to other individuals or entities that can come alongside and walk that pathway to strengthen it as well. And one of the most important challenges that we found, and has caused us, I think about 7 years ago, to shift how we support the families, is the lack of hope. When we look at hope from a Christian stance, we know where we fall there, but there's a curriculum that we use called the science of hope, that, coupled with our Christian beliefs, we also teach them how, through the science of hope, you have the power to change your circumstances. So let us walk alongside you and show you a way that you may have never been able to see before, helping them to see beyond where they are now. And I kind of call it like a bifocal vision. You're being able to see what's in front of you and then being able to see what's beyond. And that's where a lot of our clients are, because they are been in this state so long, they can only see what is directly in front of them, but showing them how to dream and see bigger and other things that are out there that can help improve their lifestyle is what we're equipped and really work hard to do. And that challenge right there, it takes time. We really take time with walking them through that process to help support them.
Go ahead, Arthur.
This is a little different for me because CCFY has a partnership with the Department of Probation. And so we get them in all different stages: intake, adjustment, supervision. And intake is just the kid did something wrong, and the court wants to take a deeper look at what they did to see if it warrants to go on probation. Adjustment is they did something wrong and it doesn't really warrant probation, but we want to monitor them for 3 months. And supervision is when they clearly have done something wrong and they're going to be on probation for like a year or more. Usually, intake is not a crisis. adjustment is not a crisis, but supervision may be a crisis situation. And during that crisis situation, I have found that a lot of parents are really fed up. They have a lot of challenges, like Nadia said. We also provide wraparound support because at that moment, they may have not been able to get food, or they weren't able to pay this, they were behind on rent or some other circumstance. And we'll try our best to help them with that. And if the young person is one that is committing recidivism or a repeat offender, that's when we get where a parent may say, you know what, I'm done with him or her. I don't want to be bothered no more, And I always tell them, don't give up on your child. Don't give up on your child. Let's take a look at what's going on, to bring you to this point. This didn't happen overnight, right? This is not something that just happened 2 months, 6 months ago, a year ago. This has been building up. So what's been going on to get you to this point? So parent coaching is so vitally important. I love what I do. I love what I do. I'm just a parent. I don't have any degrees or anything like that. I just love what I do because you just got to sit down and talk with people. These are people. These are sentient beings. These are people that are going through whatever they're going through.
Yeah, I would echo that. The two barriers of what they've already said. Number one, parents that don't want help, and that's always sad and frustrating. They just don't want help, and we can't help them if they don't want it. And secondly, the ones who are giving up, they've just thrown up their hands and said, as Arthur said, I'm done, and they've given up. And so I always go back to, the emotional maturity of the parent. And, too many parents think that age is the same as wisdom, and the age is the same as maturity. The older I get, the more mature I get. Not so. Growing old is automatic. Growing up is not. Growing up takes effort. It takes work, and the discipline that it takes. And a lot of parents, because of their immaturity, they don't have the discipline that a coach like Arthur would give them, or Nadia's program that she's giving them, and our program that we bring them to. It takes work. I can't take the responsibility for you not doing what we're coaching you to do. That's your responsibility. We're providing you resources, we're providing you help, we're providing you classes, a book, whatever it might be, but they've got to do the work. And that's where I find the barrier a lot of times right there, because the parents that do the work, they get results.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. I have one more question and then we'll wrap this panel up. But I want to first say again, thank you for being here, for offering your advice, your wisdom, your experiences. We really appreciate that. Sort of in that vein, I wonder if you guys could just briefly offer any advice you have for faith-based leaders and organizations who want to become engaged with these parents of justice-involved youth. What are some practical ways that these faith-based organizations can get involved?
I guess I'll start. We use the four-step process, very simple. First, you have to reach out. Rather than expecting, passing out a flyer, putting something in a newspaper for the parents to come to you, we got to go to them. So there's a reach out, and you reach out to recruit, and you're recruiting people to come to a program because you care about them. And in order to retain them, that's what the program's for. To recruit people and retain the people that we reach out to, we're giving them a program, something that is helping them, whether it's a train the trainer program or something like that. And then the last part is reproduce. So if we can reach out to those areas that need help, we're recruiting them to retain them through the programs that we provide. And one of those programs is a reproduction program where eventually those parents, they repeat the process. They become leaders. We're developing them as leaders in their home, leaders in the community, and then they can reach out and recruit and reproduce. And the cycle just keeps going. And as I said, faith-based organizations, we've already got a leg up simply by the message that we are serving the community from an inside out transformation within. And I just, commend everybody that's willing to reach out in those areas that are often overlooked and forgotten by other entities and agencies.
I'll go. The advice that I would give to a faith-based leader or organization to engage in this type of work is to first off develop a team. If it's one other person, the team, or two, but a team matter. This type of work cannot be done in isolation. That team can be internal or external through external partnerships. Also, you want to make sure that whomever is involved has a passion for this type of work, because if they're not passionate about it, the relationship won't be there. I love how relatable Arthur is and displays that to his constituents, those he's interacting with daily. And then I want to say, have a desire to see the change. Um, you got to want to see improvement in the area you're in, and then being equipped. And I like how Richard's program does just that. It equips those who have that passion and desire to go out and make the difference.
Well, I can't tell if Arthur is frozen or not, but
No, I'm not frozen. I'm not
okay,
frozen.
I'm so sorry.
I really don't have much to add, as to, that's funny. I'm sorry. I really don't have much to add to just say that, yeah, you can't do this for money. This is out of love for people, for other human beings. I've been told before, like, we move on and get so much more money. No, I love what I'm doing. I really, really do. And again, the magic is when you see a family, a young person. We had the honor of the assistant governor coming to our office, our little office. And we had the honor of him sitting down and listening to what it is that we did, asked how we could improve, what could he do. Now, I'm not in government, I'm not in politics, but I'm old enough and smart enough to know that a lot of times when people come by and ask you questions and it seems so promising and it never pans out, or very little does it pan out. But it still was an honor, and there was a woman that is an alumni with us that spoke out and talked about how her son got justice involved because of something that he did. He made a mistake. He did something with where she was living, and he was arrested, and he made a mistake. And he turned his life around, so much so that he's mentoring other young people that are coming into the program now. That's the magic, Everyone needs to live with each other and care for each other as best as they can. Again, Richard says something that's very prominent. Can't help everybody. Some people don't want to be helped. So, you just got to pray for them, right? But for the most part, for those that you can help, you just do your best, and I can go home and sleep well at night. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, well, thank you, Arthur, and thank you all again for speaking. I'm going to turn it back over to Maddie now to address the audience questions.
Yeah, thank you so much to all four of you. This is a really great conversation, and one thing that I just appreciated that y'all all highlighted was really the mental health component that's here. I think that we have seen already so many reports come out after a pandemic and what that has done to children and their development, and seen increase in youth crime. And thinking through that, I think, can be really challenging, and like what that looks like and how families have been shaped by that experience. So I just appreciate the way that you've elevated that. So I want to give time to the audience to put some questions in the chat, and there's already some in there, but I did have my own questions. So I was like, I can get ahead of everyone. It's the perks of being one of the moderators. You talked about stabilizing the crisis of, getting kind of stable, and then so that parents can get to a place in which they can be helpful. But, obviously parents are going into their own and experiencing their own trauma by watching their children go through becoming justice involved, whether that it looks like actually being removed from the home, or any of those things, but also these children are going through trauma. And especially if they're put in detention centers and being removed from their communities, are going through a lot of their own trauma. And such a huge problem in juvenile justice issues is that we have children who spend years in detention centers and then have a very hard time becoming productive adults because they had damage done to their brains, like they're physically, while they were removed from their community. So I guess my real question here is, are there resources that y'all are thinking about, like how we prepare, how we can prepare parents for that, how we can think through that, and also, as advocates, this is one of those areas that feels like, okay, like federally, do we need to, like, can we push on the government here to like think through like how we should provide access to healthcare, access to mental health care. So kind of all of those different options. It's a very broad question, but it's something I was curious about and wanted to see if any of your organizations are thinking about, or how you address that part of this equation.
I'll say this, one of the best thing, for 20 years, I ran the Latino Coalition for Community Leadership, which is an intermediary program. We fund, form, and feature nonprofits in marginalized communities meeting the needs of individuals and families. So the best way to describe an intermediary is that most nonprofits serve individuals, and intermediary serves organizations. So for the federal government, the best thing they can do is provide the funding to get it down to the ground, which is what an intermediary does, to organizations that are being effective. That they need funding. The people deserve to be paid for the work. As Arthur said, it's not about the money, but nevertheless, there are people out there working hard beyond 8 to 5. These are not 8 to 5 jobs. So one of the best things they can do is to continue to provide the funding and get it to the grassroots organizations that are out there, so they can have the resources for all the different things you mentioned, Maddie. So that's one thing as far as federal government. As you know, I think federal governments are not real good at dealing with social problems, but they can provide support, and that's the main thing that we've seen them. It's very helpful when we have the funding to provide to nonprofits.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great answer.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I can't add anything to that. Funding is paramount. We can't operate if we don't have the funding. And there have been times when we were on pins and needles, literally, not knowing if we were going to be able to stay open. So yes, that is paramount. Thank you, Richard.
And I don't have anything to add to that either.
Yeah,
Spot on.
I don't want to cut you off if you did, but I think that's actually a great thing for us to know as advocates, but also a good reminder for churches that maybe don't have capacity to do their own diversion programs and things like that. They do have capacity to financially support organizations that might have the skills and things like that to do that. And so how can we also be investing in the organizations that invest in our youth and our families? But that was actually one of the questions I saw in the comments, was about how can federal organizations partner better with organizations, and what does that look like? And I will say, from CPJ's perspective, and sort of as far as our resources go, this is one thing that we try to think about really well is, what is the purpose of each different type of organization or each different institution? And so, yeah, like, there's things that only the government can do because only they have access to certain resources. And then there are things that like churches are great at doing, or nonprofits are really great at doing, or individuals are doing. And I think that is a really helpful way of kind of thinking through, like, where can we, ask people to fulfill their responsibility of what their institution is already doing, or is best at.
Another contribution before you switch on that, is policy. A lot of faith-based leaders, they have great ideas, to influence policy that is going to be helpful to parents. And if we're talking only of the incarcerated youth, those kinds of things, some of the policies that some of these, like I've worked in juvenile hall, I've worked in 2 prisons. And so that could be another way of opening up the table and letting them have a seat at the table to express their ideas regarding, and I don't want to get into all, there's so many things, but just policy in general at that level, that would be another way to involve the faith community, their voice.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always big supporters of faith-based organizations and churches really being educated on policy and being engaged civically there. One question I saw is, where can people order the Science of Hope curriculum? I think Nadia, do you know?
So yeah, the Science of Hope actually comes from a book, Hope Rising by Chad, I think it's Chad Hillman. The extensive research was done out of the University of Oklahoma, and you'll find that many almost governmental entities there, as well as it's been utilized throughout. Because what the research has found, first of all, what the Science of Hope does, it pretty much takes individuals, exerts their efforts and energy into taking action to achieve goals and focusing around how that individual can take steps to achieve the goals and outcomes of their circumstances. And we look at it, I like to compare it to like Dave Ramsey's approach to eliminating debt. You have the snowball effect and the avalanche effect. The snowball effect, it takes the smallest bills out and recognizing small wins, where the avalanche effect will look at those bills with the highest interest rate, but can impact bigger other things. And so with our clients that we serve, we have to really see where they are. Some of our clients are needing to see small wins and being able to make goals around, let's tackle this small piece first. And some of our clients may get to a place once they have stabilized to say, okay, I'm ready to go full force and I can take this big project, because once I do this one, I know it will impact this. So yeah, so that is where the Science of Hope comes. And we take our clients and we measure their hope rising scores of when they first came in, where they are along the process throughout the way, because the research shows if we continue them along this pathway, couple them with the resources and the support, that we can help them change their trajectory.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is a great question, is how do you develop these collaborations with local courts? And is there an example of an agreement of expectation? I think even thinking through like, how do you build relationship with not only local courts, but police officers, correctional officers, all these different kind of components of the system you normally think of fighting against, but might need to be in partnership with?
I I would like to share. We're place-based, so we're located like at different churches or schools throughout our city. And one important thing, we have leaders that really are very intentional about galvanizing the support of the local precincts, bringing them in, and even making sure that they're good, because they're always taking care of us, but even thinking enough to bring them lunch sometimes, or to say, hey, we want you to, give a self-care, a care package to you guys for taking care of us, because recognizing what you do for the community, but and then just building a two-way communication pathway and getting involved in those things that are offered throughout the communities. I know we're engaged in resource fairs that the judges are having to connect those that are facing reentry with different services that can be provided, and connecting with other organizations, because we recognize that we can't do all things well, but we can partner with someone else who's doing something particularly well. And though we may can't serve this individual in this way, let's partner with them, or let's do a soft handoff so that you can get this what you really need and get it done well. So I would say the collaborative efforts and just engaging in law enforcement in different areas within the process of where we are with our individuals we're working with.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I ditto on that. You know, when you have an event, inviting the mayor, the chief of police, whatever, and giving them a plaque, just recognizing them for the hard work that they do. If it's a hospital, a politician, a teacher, a principal, a super, any of those kinds of entities in the community, the court, judges, and it's not a fake or a phony thing. It's a genuine recognition, some kind of certificate or whatever. They appreciate that. They don't always get that from faith-based organizations or other organizations. So, Nadia is absolutely right. That's one of you got to reach out and get involved, and that's one of the best ways to do that.
Okay, so we're running really low on time, but we have one last question I want to make sure we get to. Is there any local, state, or federal policies that have really helped support your work that you do that you think should be replicated in other parts of the country?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, are there any local, state, or federal policies that have supported your work that you think should be replicated elsewhere? Especially we are representing California, Tennessee, New York, I think. So got some diversity on state policy at least.
Well, I'll just say this. We had a great relationship with the Department of Corrections in Colorado and still do. So that's at the state level. At the federal level, we had a great relationship. We still continue to have a great relationship with the Department of Labor because they are funding reentry programs. And so the funding we received, we were able to re-grant it to reentry programs that are working in that space. At the local level, the foundations, community foundations and private foundations. But again, all of that happens through, not only relationship, but obviously being able to collect data and prove that your work is fruitful, being able to show them, the results of the work and building that relationship, because they have to answer to whoever they're receiving the money from. For example, Congress, they want to know, okay, Department of Labor, where's the numbers of all the people that were reached by X community organization? So that requires that whole continuum of relationship, results, all the things that they want to see. I don't know if it's a policy necessarily, although it could be. We did advocate in Colorado with the Department of Corrections. They didn't like it, but the budget of their money, they got all this money, and where's it going? It was going to all these other law enforcement things. We know we need law enforcement. I'm not saying we don't, but we were able to advocate for, I started with $1 million out of their budget from the corrections into the community. So things like that, again, that's a long story, but there's certainly things that can be done, but it all goes back to relationship and reaching out and having conversations. That's what I would encourage anybody to just pick up the phone.
I just want to touch on it real quick. This is really not my space because I'm on the front line as a parent coach, but I'll tell you what I do know. We've had the partnership with the Department of Probation for the last 10 years, from 2014 since it was launched. We did have a partnership for a while with Agency of Child Services, where we were meeting families at the Juvenile Detention Center when they were going to visit their young person. And we would go ahead and coach them as to how to go about getting the best services for their child while they were detained. That relationship, that contract was not renewed. However, I believe that, if there's some type of talks in the future, maybe we can start that up again. There was communication with NYPD and the community division where we wanted to partner with NYPD because they rely on programs now more than ever to, because I think young people, I want to make sure I choose my words carefully. The young people now sometimes are targeted, and we want to try and get them firsthand before they get involved with the police. So we're hopeful for those communications to start back up.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing communication and relationship again. And yeah, and I think sometimes we have to initiate that contact to be able to get in those spaces. And one thing that we've been doing recently is hosting legislative roundtables with local and state politicos that can support our efforts and things like that. And recently, we were recognized and awarded the opportunity to serve out-of-school youth in our county. Um, that was those individuals ages 16 to 24 who have barriers to get employment or to get re-enrolled in school. So they may be youth that have dropped out, maybe youth that have been have been incarcerated or have backgrounds, pregnant, aged out of foster care, various barriers. And we take them on with our two-generation approach and work to get them either employed or enrolled in a school for post-secondary or even back into school for GED.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that program. Well, we're a little over time, so I just wanted to thank you all so much for your contributions, all the things you had to add, and thank you to the audience for the questions you asked. I feel like these were really fruitful answers. Originally, we were going to go to a break, but because we're over time, I'm going to just jump right into my conversation with Nadia. But thank you so much, Arthur and Richard. Really appreciate you being on our panel today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we wanted to be able to kind of take a little bit of a break from the panel format and do a good, be able to share a story of a program that is happening and working. So I'm so happy to have Nadia here with us. If you joined us later and weren't here when we were first doing introductions, Nadia is the Chief Program Officer for Agape Child and Family Services, where she leads initiatives to support children and families in need. Agape has been using the 2-gen approach. So for those who are not familiar, the 2-gen approach recognizes whole family units as families define themselves, which is very different depending on where you are, but it doesn't really matter. It's more about seeing it as a unit. To consider the variety of pathways for promoting positive, pragmatic, and effective outcomes for everyone in that family unit. 2-generation approach works with families as experts and meaningfully engage parents and caregivers in designing policies and programs that affect them in order to develop holistic, integrated, and equity-focused solutions. This is a family-centered lens that helps to immediately identify whole family needs and goals to inform integrations and alignments to programs that serve them, which maximize long-term impacts for families and communities. 2-gen is still a very new approach and new method out there in sociology and nonprofit world. So I'm so excited to have Nadia just share a little bit about how y'all are using that right now, what that looks like at Agape, and how it started and how it's going.
Thank you. So, as I stated earlier, we are a Christ-centered organization that fights poverty through God for families to flourish. And annually, we are able to support 1,300 to 3,500, 1,300 families and 3,500 children and families annually through our 2-gen whole family cradle to career and beyond platform. And so through that, we have several client-facing programs that are points of entry for individuals that we contact regularly. I was able to talk minimally about them in the panel today, but I'll take this time to kind of share how we are able to get the individuals within our supportive network. One is our STARS school-based program where we take students, we're currently in 17 schools right now, that we take students on caseload that have attendance issues or behavioral issues, and we work with them on intervention strategies. We work with the parent for increasing parental engagement throughout the process. And because this type of work, being that I came from the school sector, knowing that there are limitations. Well, what our connectors are able to do is actually work with the student, their family, go to the home, really provide those supportive services that may be barriers for them coming to school, or getting to the root cause of why there may be behavioral issues that's exhibited in school, knowing that it stems from the home. And we're able to utilize several of our services to wrap around that family to get them to a better space. We have our our early childhood development program, where we work with parents of youth from 0 to 5 years old. And with that, we provide nurturing parenting classes that help them with early literacy skills to increase the child's literacy so that they can be ready by the time they enter kindergarten. We also have our clinical therapist-based program that provides counseling to those in the household that may need it. We have our families in transitions that work with those individuals that may be victims of domestic violence. They are certified social workers that are ready and able. We're really fortunate and thankful that we've been able to get approved for grants that allows us to put these families in temporary houses, and some have been longer term housing, so they can escape that situation, and then we can begin providing our supportive services with them to get them into a better place mentally. I've kind of talked about the Hope Rising that we work with those families on, as well as very practical things that are creating barriers for them to be success. It may be transportation, childcare that we have to come in and support with to a time where they're able to kind of get themselves settled and on their feet to do well with that. We have our church hub model, and that is through our chaplains, as well as some that we have that work with pastors, bringing these services within the church walls. That, hey, we have parishioners that need these services, but they don't reside in this school community that you have. So we'll set up shop in a church that's in a community and provide those opportunities for the community members that live nearby that church, as well as the parishioners that attend that church, to make sure we're fully engrossed in every aspect of the community. And also the pastors support our clients with spiritual health, as well as our hub connectors. They do the same. And we have school-based chaplains that they use the national chaplaincy model because federal government doesn't allow us to speak of God, so to say, in the churches, but we speak around the hope. We speak around making better choices, working with the youth around social emotional issues. Now, if the parents give consent, then we can begin to disciple the children, but we cannot do that during the school day to make sure that we're in compliance with federal guidelines with that. And where I would like to kind of land my hat right now is with our workforce development program, and that has made a lot of strides um, with us this year. And the reason why we were able to enter this space is because of our 2-gen work that we offer to families and not just focus on an individual. So the state of Tennessee has a workforce development through American Job Centers, and we have to go through a long bidding process. And because our 2-gen approach has been tried and true and has been effective, we were selected to serve all the youth in our county, I'm sorry, not all the youth, all the out of school youth. And there's the distinction between in the school youth and out of the school youth. Our out of school youth are youth aged 16 to 24. And there are, think about 12 barriers that they can have to get into this program. They, of course, have to meet the age requirement. One requirement, they don't have to reach all of them, but have at least 3 of them as barriers. Economically disadvantaged, as I mentioned before, a parent, pregnant, aged out of foster care. There's a language barrier for the youth, incarcerated, dropouts. And our goals when we work with this youth is to get them enrolled in the post-secondary program or any educational institution or employed. And we have funding where we can pay a upfront cost for them to get certified through 5 career areas such as transportation, IT, healthcare, warehousing, logistics, and manufacturing. And we're partnered with a lot of different companies in our area to help get them trained, upskilled, or even enrolled in schools. So I said earlier, and this is something I firmly believe, this type of work cannot be done in isolation. It's no way possible that we can do this work alone. I don't care how strong our framework is or model is, we have to be able to connect and collaborate with others externally because I believe there is power in connectivity. And we know that the holidays are coming upon us, and we all watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and the scene where he's working on the Christmas light. But when one wire goes astray, it messes up the whole picture. And I see that same thing as us being connected to those in our community, that if we're not connected uh, effectively, then nothing will light up. We won't be that beacon of light. And every part, every person, every organization, every entity has a part to play. Therefore, we have stakeholders meetings for those from church sectors, from the reentry sector, from the police station, from the community college, from the school system. We bring them into the room knowing that this is our goal. Yes, Agape was charged with this, but we all live in this county. These youth impact all of us because if we don't capture them and get them um, focused on getting enrolled in school or getting employed, they're going to find other things to take their attention and distract them that may not be as positive. So we all came to the room and they generated ideas to help us be able to do this work well. But not only that, they said, here is where I can plug in, or this is where I can support to make sure that we are doing what we can to support the youth in our county and to help decrease, because we had several from the correctional entity there to help decrease crime. So a lot of innovative ideas and amazing conversations came from that stakeholders, as well as action steps to help increase and accomplish goals. So that is one way this 2Gen approach has been utilized, as well as opened doors for us that we never thought could have been, but it is here, and we're excited to take it on.
Yeah, this has just been so great. And thank you for such a thorough explanation of the work you do, because y'all are doing so much. My brain was kind of blown. I was like, wow. And which is really great. But I think too, we just talked on this last panel about how important hope is. And hearing stories like this and the work that y'all are doing is how we build hope for better communities that are standing together, that are strong, that are finding opportunities to continue to grow. And I also really think that what's so key here is the work that you are doing. Some might say where's the overlap with juvenile justice there? And this is the greatest diversion from the justice system you can do, by making sure that people have the resources they need to raise families, to strengthen their families, to have access to education, to end and break the cycle that's happening in so many, multi-generational traumatized homes. So just thank you so much for the work you're doing. I did see that there's a couple of questions in the comments, so I wanted to make sure we got to those. Elizabeth asked, does Agape offer nurturing parent training to other nonprofit organizations for this training staff?
So we did just have 2 individuals from our team to go through the Train the Trainer program. So we do have facilitators that are now officially trained to train others.
Wow, that's awesome. And this other, So many, okay, y'all have great questions. Like, this is what I want to know. Could you maybe share, you said everyone has a part to play. Could you share if you have to make connections with local businesses and organizations that serve as dedicated sources of information and resources? And if not, how do families who are currently not connected get connected to your work if they are not in the schools that you work in?
Okay, so there's a two-part question. I remember the second part, how do parents in our communities get connected to our work if they're not in the school? Because we do have the church hub model. If they are living in a community near or around our church hub or near or around the school, then they may not work with the school connector. They may be connected to what we call our family connectors. That's the family, or they can come in through the portal of the early childhood. If they're a family that has a child in the home from 0 to 5, then that's a portal of entry there. If there's someone in the home who is wanting employment, we have our Teamworks department. They're in position to take them there. On now our other areas, our most robust area right now is our out of school youth. But before we were doing this big major work, we already had our workforce development piece going at a smaller scale, not as big as it is now with this out of school youth component. But we do have connectors in place that are specialized around employability workshops, connecting individuals with upskilling, on the job training, um, things of that nature also. Now, your first question, okay, through the counseling, that's another portal of entry. And if they're a victim of domestic violence, that's a portal of entry for us as well. And I did not mention our Becoming One marriage, and it was once the marriage component, but they have now expanded, and because of the work and traction, been awarded an opportunity to serve individuals. They were using the Prep H curriculum before, and now they're utilizing another curriculum for individuals. And both of the goals are to strengthen relationships. And it's not so much as singles because of the negative connotation that comes with that, but individuals strengthening relationships with their family. They may be engaged or they may have a spouse that relationships need to be strengthened in that area. But there are so many chapters for that connect with so many areas beyond just the spousal relationship that helps with. And the first part of your question was.
Oh, yes, I can answer again. So you said everyone has a part to play. Could you share if you have had to make connections with local businesses and organizations that serve as dedicated sources of information and resources?
Yes, so we have an internal resource book that it almost has to get updated regularly, because as I stated before, we cannot do what we do alone. And we are partnered with so many agencies and even agencies that do similar work. Like, we have our early childhood component, but we partner with an organization that is larger in that work in our area. And actually, they did our train, they certified us to train the trainer in nurturing parenting, as well as connecting some of our families to them for their preschool, because we don't have preschool and they have offerings that we can't provide that we're partnered with. And that's just speaking of one Porter Leaf that I could think of. We connected with United Way, that's driving the dream for us. They send referrals our way. And we are able to, when we get clients from them, we are able to identify their need. If their need is more extensive than what we can provide, we will definitely refer them out, because even with our clinical therapists, our counselors, the type of therapy we provide is not drug substance abuse. So we do have to refer them out to agencies that are more equipped to handle them effectively. So it's not like we try to hold on to everyone we get. It would be a disservice. So collaboration is a big part, and networking is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And that's one of the reasons that CPJ hosts these convenings annually, is not only to provide education, but also just to connect organizations. So many, especially churches, can be really small and not know, what other people are doing or other people might not know what they're doing. And so this is such a great opportunity to connect and hear from what other organizations are doing so that we can learn from each other and build relationships there to continue the work and continue to build capacity, especially when it is such a hard time to get a lot of funding and things like that. We have more resources than just money too. Like we have knowledge that we get to share with each other and experiences. I will also tell you, there's a question in the comments about specifics. Great, you saw it. Great, awesome. Thank you for adding your email there. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing. We're really thankful for the work that Agape is doing and the massive amount of children and families that you are able to support and empower so that they can flourish. Awesome.
Thank you, Maddie, for this amazing opportunity.
No, of course. Okay, well, with that, we're going to shift into our second panel. Our second panel is called Restorative Justice, How Faith Leaders and Faith-Based Organizations Can Support Parent Engagement and Holistic Healing. I'm going to welcome Bishop Ferguson, Anthony Person, and Amy Williams to the spotlight. Dr. Ferguson serves as the 7th pastor in the 107-year history of the Bethel Baptist Church in Orange, New Jersey. Dr. Ferguson is the author of How I Became an Angry Black Man from Prison to Pulpit. Welcome, Dr. Ferguson. We're so happy to have you. And then we'll have Anthony is a Boston-based advocate and leader dedicated to empowering young people and communities through justice-centered, faith-based, and educational initiatives. Anthony is a licensed minister, and he's also the assistant director at Straight Ahead Ministries. Welcome, Anthony. We're so happy to have you here as well. And then last but definitely not least is Amy Williams, a 30-year-long youth ministry veteran who currently
I wish I were 30 years old.
who currently serves as the project coordinator for the Illinois Youth Center for New Life Centers, Chicagoland. Amy, you just should have gone with it. You should have been like, yeah, absolutely. 30 years old. I'm so excited to have all three of you here to really talk about such an important issue like restorative justice and how faith-based organizations and pastors can be involved. But just to get us started, just as we did earlier with our first panel, I would love to hear just how did your faith bring you to your work that you're doing? Dr. Ferguson? For some reason, there's like a problem with your audio. Could you try turning it off and then on again? See if that works.
It's Dr. Newell.
That better?
That's
Can you hear
perfect.
me?
Okay, excellent. I don't know why I have trouble with audio on this computer. Okay. It was organic for me. I started doing kind of juvenile justice work while I was incarcerated. At Sing Sing, we had this program called, it was called the, what did they call it? The YAP program, the Youth Awareness Program, where they brought children in to talk to us who were doing time. And, over the years, I might have talked to hundreds of kids and just, fell in love with this idea of being able to use my story of my, at that point, it wasn't even a redemption story, it was a cautionary tale at that point about how faith, and my portion of that, that was a spiritual autobiography to tell them how faith had got me where I was and got me through that point of my incarceration. And not too long after I was released from prison in 1998, I'm walking down the street in the Bronx. I was home. I lived right near Yankee Stadium. All you Dodgers fans, just for a minute. This kid walks up to me. He says, "Yo, man, I know you. You were I seen you when you were locked up. I came up there, man. You turned my life around." And that kind of began it. And then New York Theological Seminary, where I graduated in prison, started this program called Youth Turn, where they sent 10 men who had graduated from their prison programs to 10 churches, 5 in Harlem and 5 in Brooklyn, to do gang outreach. And I ended up at the Abyssinian Baptist Church, and it ended up as their youth minister. And for the last 26 years, no matter where I've gone or what I've done, some capacity of my work has been about youth justice, and using my understanding of my faith as an opportunity to work with, to help, to minister, to redirect, if you will, youth. And I don't call them youth at risk; we call them youth at promise. So, and it's wonderful just being on here. This is just another culmination of all the work that I've done, because Arthur Markland and I grew up together. We went to the same high school, so that's like really cool.
Yeah, that was so awesome. I saw that in the comments. I was like, that's crazy. What a small world. But it just means you're doing the right stuff when you keep running into the same people, right?
No signpost that says you're in the right place.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Amy or Anthony, who wants to go next?
I can go. Can you repeat what we should?
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to share a little bit about how did your faith kind of bring you to this work?
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from New Jersey, and I found my self at Boston College, and was excited to attend there and play football and do some amazing things. And somewhere around my junior year, I had an injury. Prior to that, I was, really focused on, football and school and so on, and then not really got it to my faith or anything in that way. And then that injury kind of got my attention, and in a different way. And I felt like that was helpful for me at that time, although really painful. But then I got connected while I was injured with a church that was a good fit for me. And straight ahead had volunteers going into lockup. I was at BC. I felt like, oh, I would love to volunteer. I have time now. Let me figure this out. And I volunteered with Straight Ahead, and Straight Ahead Ministries was going into different facilities within Boston to share the faith and to have young people be able to discover their faith in a new way. And these small discussion groups, and it was incredible to see like just the cultural relevance and the connection that the guys that I was shadowing had in the facility with the guys. And I loved it. And I think more and more as I developed my faith and stayed connected to that, it was seamless. I began to see myself more there. I was around these guys more, and I could share my experiences with them and connect. And it was nothing like it, and I think it's one thing to be able to meet some people. It's another thing to know their lives. And the more you learn their lives and understand, that although it's just two of you sitting in the down or playing a game or doing something else, you're building relationship. And that relationship became the sticky stuff. And that sticky stuff that kind of really keeps you connected with the young people that you're working with. It doesn't let you go too easy. I wound up going to working with the commission for Boston Public Health Commission for in the Boston Area Health Education Center, which is a youth pipeline program, and did that for a while too. So learned the gaps that were there, but then it came right back full circle, and I'm right here again at Straight Ahead for the second time, and I really love this work. I have a passion for this work, as I think Nadia was talking about earlier, and I think faith keeps adding to that. It's only adding to that more and more. So, but that's my journey. I don't want to take any more time. I want to pass it on to Amy also.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I think that's a very interesting question, because when I look at faith, for me, it's not a thing that I do, it's my lifestyle. And living in Chicago, being around young people that are in under-resourced communities, coming to the church, that's part of my lifestyle, right? Like the neighborhood that I live in, the young people on my block, the work. And so what has really informed my work is my brother was gang involved and in and out of the system when I was a teenager. And there was nothing that I could do about it because I was a teenager myself. Now I'm an adult and I'm drawn to young people that were in the situation that he was in, knowing that he was one of the most brilliant, most talented people that I know, but the way society treated him and looked at him was a totally different narrative, and I didn't like that. And so being drawn to the underdog, you know, I'm the cheerleader for the ones that society tends to throw away, has really all shaped and informed that. And faith is just a part of who I am. It's ingrained in my DNA. And so that's kind of how I found myself in the work through my brother and living in Chicago.
Yeah, yeah. I know that right on. And thank you so much for sharing that. Because I think that is kind of sometimes how we feel. Like I think even CPJ, sometimes people have said this, like, why do y'all do like juvenile justice? Like there's not a big legislative thing happening in DC around that. And it's like, well, how do we not care about children being incarcerated? How do we not care about communities that are struggling? And so yeah, thank you for uplifting that. Okay, so for our second question, you know, we talk a lot in DC about the influence that pastors have and faith leaders have and leaders of faith communities. And really, one of the reasons that people talk about that in DC so much is because faith leaders are who are forming, you know, the people in their congregations in a lot of ways, and forming their spiritual formation. But one of the things that we've seen with parental engagement is that seems to be where there's a real struggle. So I'm curious of how are you seeing parents being formed around supporting their children and that are impacted by the justice system? Are they being formed by, you know, or impacted by social thought or perceptions by, you know, society, things like that, or, you know, by what they're trying to achieve in their future and all these different things. There's just all these compounding factors that go into how parents are shaped as far as like, what do they do when their children are impacted by the justice system?
My experience has been that parents usually grasp at any straw available to them until they can find someone, till they find what I love that phrase that Anthony uses about sticky stuff, right? Is to find that sticky place, to find that place where they're going to get the help, the compassion, the understanding, the non-judgmental resources that they need. What I found is that parents are often desperate, and they'll reach out, if it's the church, if it's the community-based organization, if it's the schools, wherever they can find the help, that's where they'll go. And I think that it's incumbent upon us as faith leaders to make sure that we're in that equation, that we are a viable resource for folks. Because oftentimes, if we want to be completely honest, we're not. A lot of times, churches and faith-based communities become places where people feel more judgment than they do opportunities for help. So my job as a pastor is to first of all develop a ministry and a attitude of ministry within my congregation, that we don't judge people based on mistakes, and we don't judge people for the worst day in their life. And I have the great opportunity to use myself, my own story, as an opportunity to tell people, look, if people judge me by the worst thing I ever did in my life, I wouldn't be your pastor. If people judge me by the worst thing I've ever done in my life, I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to do the work that I do. I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to be here for you in this place. So how dare you judge people based on somebody making a mistake, or a family that has been torn apart by the actions of a young person who hasn't developed the mental capacity to even understand the weight of what they're doing. So I think it's all about creating space for families. It's all about creating an opportunity to love on families in a non-judgmental way and say, hey, you're safe here. And the church may not be the resource. The church may just be the place where they can find the love and the understanding and the hugs that they need. And because I believe that one of the most valuable things that any church can have is a list of resources within the community that people can reach out to and get the help that they need. Or even more so I'm blessed enough to have in my church, I have 2 city council members. So I have the city council president, and I have another member of the city council who is the president, is the chairman of our trustee board. So I have some of those resources right in the congregation to be able to reach out and say, hey, do you know somebody who could do this? Do you know somebody who can supply that? But we cannot close doors on people. We cannot allow the people in our pews to be judgmental in a way that our congregations and our houses of worship aren't sticky places for people who need help because of things that have happened with their children.
I think one of the things that I have found, at least here in our city, is that parents don't look to the church for help. They're looking at systems and the government. They're looking at extended families. They're looking at nonprofit organizations. A lot of them don't look to the church for that. I think for a lot of reasons that Dr. Ferguson had mentioned, but also because the church kind of is a come to me kind of institution, as opposed to us going to them, us going into the court, us going into the prisons, us making those kind of connections. And so somewhere in this whole working with parents, and especially, you know, when we begin to start talking about restorative justice, it's not about us sitting and waiting for these parents to come through our church doors. That may not happen. That may never happen. I know here it doesn't happen that often. And so, you know, there's a responsibility on the church, and we can get scriptures and all those kind of things about how we are to go to where they are, meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with everything here. I think you know, the church has a key role to play, a key opportunity in that. And you know, I think I love how, you know, Dr. Darren was speaking on just this non-judgmental environment, because when a young person is involved and they're either behind the wall or re-entering into a community, there's a lot of judgment. And it would be great if the church wasn't the place where they would receive that. But it takes knowledge from the church. It takes a challenging of a theology. It takes a challenging of a perspective. And if they're doing that, then that's good growth for a church, so they could resemble that healthy place. And when they're not, it's challenging, because then you lean more on the people in the church instead of relying on an institution, which is good too. So I think that there's a balance of that, but I would just say do what you can do, you know, and sometimes there's some, you know, I think we also have to remember that the pastor, where he or she may not have time to go into a facility, they are also speaking to the caseworkers that are a part of their congregation, the judges that are right there, and the people with influence in these children's lives, in these young people's lives that have decision-making power. And I think that's important. You know, it's not discounted the value that I think that they have. But it is about, you know, building relationships. Someone said you know, a shepherd ought to always smell like sheep. You know what I mean? Like you should be so close to those that you care about. Sometimes we could spend $800 a month on youth ministry work on Friday nights, where 4 young people come, and then we miss the opportunity to speak to 15 young men that are, or young ladies that are right in the facility somewhere that could really be helpful. And I think once those bridges come and we begin to think outside the box on how to create that place and that right environment for them, then I think it will take coordination, because I think that, and I don't want to get too far, I know we have some time to go, but I think it does take coordination for people to have that on their heart, to connect those dots, so that we're not working in silos, and that you're working at least in the 5-mile radius of the place where you go to, where you learn and where you grow in your spiritual development, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Maddie, if I could tag one more thing onto that.
Go for it.
Because Anthony touched on something I think is important. When I got to Abyssinian Baptist Church, one of the most notable churches in the country, they had no idea. Dr. Butts was a true visionary, because he brought me in to do this program, to do gang outreach. And I'm looking at this congregation. I'm looking at Cicely Tyson, and I'm looking at all these famous people sitting in the congregation every Sunday. And I said to Dr. Butts, my friend, I said, "How is this church going to affect these kids? Who were waving flags?" And he said, "You just do the work, and I'll do the rest." And I remember bringing a group of kids, some gangbangers and stuff, to church on Sunday, and the congregation, kind of looked at them kind of askance. But what happened over time, as we brought the kids into the church and we invited them to the church, and not just that, one of my first Sundays in the church, I knew there was a gang cipher that happened on Sundays up on 7th Avenue and 140th Street. And I literally left youth church, walked up to 7th Avenue in my robe, and stood there right there in the cipher. And the dudes would look at me like I'm crazy. "Yo, who's this dude?" And I say, "Yo, I'm Reverend Ferguson." I gave him a little bit of my background. I'm an Abyssinian. "Yo, I know not all y'all trying to jump these young kids in. Why don't you bring them down to the church? I do a group on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I promise y'all I won't bore y'all." Blah, 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 blah. And they started coming. And then, I found out the kids were coming to the group and they were saying, yo, the dude said, "I got to come see the OG down here at the church." They started calling me, Reverend OG. But the point is that exactly what Amy said, is we can't sit in the church and wait for them to come. We have to get outside of the four walls of the church. One of the things that I tell my church every Sunday is we have to stop having church and start being the church. And being the church means you get outside of the four walls and go and reach where they are. And then give them the opportunity to say, "You said something or did something that was impactful to me. I want to come and worship with you." But the point of your outreach should not be to bring people into worship. The point of your outreach should be to do the work that God has called us to do.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was such great answers all over it. So I was like, everything you just said, so great. But I think I really want to pull two threads that I really want to pull on. One is, Anthony, what you brought up about education, I think is so important, because pastors really can gift their congregations when they provide education around these issues. Because, when I started working in the youth advocacy spaces, I remember I got so bitter and angry at churches for not doing more. And I was like, how are they turning a blind eye to these children that are being hurt by the justice system, that are being separated, from their families, all this stuff like that. And then I would go in angry and say that to them, and I'd be like, "What's happening? That's actually happening." And then when they found out it was happening, they were like, "Oh, okay, I want to do something now." And so it's thinking how do we make those connection points and help provide those resources and education. But it's also just, again, coming back to that, it happens in relationship. Because I think when people, when they've never been involved in the justice system themselves, there is this very black and white thinking of "Oh, well, you did something really bad, you deserve to be punished," whatever. The second a family becomes justice involved, they know how easy it is to fall into that system, how hard it is to get out of it, how complicated it is, how nuanced it is. The fact that in the United States still juveniles most commonly get involved in the justice system because of truancy, which I can't imagine the majority of people would say is the reason that anyone should get involved in the justice system. I just really appreciate it, and I'll bring in those threads out to this conversation because I think they're really important. But for our next question, I want to think about one of the greatest assets I think the faith-based organizations and churches bring to the juvenile justice space is the work that they can do on relationships. And we've talked a lot about diverting youth away from the justice system, but once youth is involved in the system, there is so much restoration and healing that has to happen there. And there's fundamentally broken relationships because of that involvement. And whether they were removed from their home and therefore there has to be healing there, or healing within their community if they did something to hurt people in their community. So how can pastors and church congregations help restore familial relationships and actually participate in the process of encouraging restorative justice?
So one of the blessings that I have is the privilege to partner with the system. And through my organization, or through the organization I work for, New Life Centers, we bring in restorative justice programming into the prison itself, right? So we're working with young people. We do the peace circles. Which peace circles are amazing because it allows young people to be heard. It allows them to think and to process and to speak. we do lots of other programmings inside, like art and music and all those other kind of ways. But quarterly we do a family fun fest, so we invite families to come in and spend 2 to 3 hours with their young person, where we do games, art, food, develop those relationships, introduce ourselves and the mentors and my reentry team. We also provide transportation for parents that can't drive an hour to see their young person, to see their children. So we'll drive them to the facility, let them have their visit, bring them home, right? Lots of different ways that we're able to help while the young people are on the inside. That's kind of my focus. When they come home, then our reentry team has already developed relationships with those young people. And then that makes it easy for us to then have relationships with the parents. Sometimes we develop those relationships with parents while the young person is on the inside. We try to incorporate the whole team, but really providing those spaces where young people can be heard. I think that's one of the biggest steps towards healing, right? It's like, listen to me, I have something to say. And a lot of times we just shut down young people, but we're able to provide safe spaces for that approach of healing in a restorative way.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things that we always say in reentry spaces is don't talk about us without us, right? And one of the things that we often do is we, especially with young people more than anyone else, and we do it with the reentry community too, is we talk about them without them. It always cracks me up when we have this stuff. Well, we're going to have a youth panel, but there's no young people on it. Or we're going to have a reentry panel and nobody on the panel is formally incarcerated. Like, really?
Right.
Like, what are we
Right.
doing here? And I think that the more that we hear young people's voices, because one of the things that we do really well in church is we do all these programs and we do all this youth stuff. There's going to be hallelujah nights in churches all across the country, but I can tell you that 60 to 75% of them never asked the kids what they wanted. None of them asked the young people what they thought was important, what the theme that they thought was important. So I think it's important to engage young people. Some of the work that I do with an organization called Healing Communities USA is we train congregations in how to be stations of hope in the lives of people who are going through the criminal justice system, all the way from when a young person gets arrested. Immediately, the church should go into action and be present at the court dates, because that shows the judge the community connections that these young people have, and supporting the family through the entire process, making sure that we have a relationship with the family and with the person who's incarcerated, especially young people while they're incarcerated, so that when they come home, it's not all of a sudden we got our hand out and wanting to come to some, well, where you been? I've been locked up for 2 years. Where you been all this time? Now all of a sudden, right? Because, and that's the case with a lot of these programs. A lot of the programs, unfortunately, are dealing with issues where they have to have numbers in order to get funding. And the way that they get numbers is they try to reel people in as soon as they come out of prison. But the person who's come, I know when I came out of prison, all of these organizations that were trying to get me involved, I was looking at them like, where was y'all when I was locked up? And the organization that I gravitated towards was the Osborne Association, because they had a program inside the prison where I was incarcerated. So we have to broker relationships on several fronts. We have to be present on several fronts, and we have to provide leadership that's passionate about young people and making sure that their voices are heard in every aspect of our ministries, not just in juvenile justice, not just in dealing with young people who've been had issues with the criminal justice system, but those young people in our churches who've never been involved with the criminal justice system, and having those conversations with them. Because I think that one of the things that our society does really badly, we do the pound of cure really well, but we're really bad at the ounce of prevention, because there's not as much money to be made on the ounce of prevention, but the ounce of prevention is what keeps lives from being ruined.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I'm trying to figure out what to add to it without, because I echo the voice. I think that's something that's really important. There's also this idea of training people and helping them understand that it's just not going in one size fits all approach. You can't use the same curriculum from your Friday night Bible study and just say, hey, I'm going to bring this in and this is going to work. It takes a different adaptability and flexibility of people who do, because lives are changed, minds are changed, things are happening, you know, and on different levels. And I think it takes people with the awareness about that to be able to speak to that, to be authentic, to be real, to remove the barriers that these young people have in receiving information from people, particularly those that are in the church, because it comes with the greatest stereotype, you know. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to rethink, repackage, you know, what we think about ministry, what we think about discipleship, what we think about these things, because the reality is that if we're depending on the church, which has an address, then we've already failed. If we're thinking about a system within that address and they should do something about it, then we're missing the point that we are the church. You know, then it's not where you go, it's who you are. You know, it's a different thing. And so the church should have every address. It should be more present than we are, and we should take that awareness and do something with it. Get involved. That takes, you know, straight ahead. We have we offer an Institute of Juvenile Justice Ministry training, so that people who are interested in getting involved can see what that's like, what to anticipate, what barriers might be there, and how to better serve and work with a young person and who's experiencing that level of trauma. What are they going through? Where are their minds at? Sometimes, most of the time, they're in a fight, you know, or a flight response instead of being present where they are. And we need to know how to deal with that. And so I think training is important, being able to prepare people for that, but shifting the paradigm that this is someone else's responsibility and saying, what can I do to get involved? You know, and not passing the buck like, you know, can't nobody else vote for you. You are you. This is your opportunity, right? And I think that there's that, you know. So,
And if I can add, we have to be very careful that our language isn't they and them, but that is we and us, right? So I love how Father Greg Boyle is always like, you have to be the hero of your own story. You have to be the hero of your own life. How do we engage young people to make these decisions, to help them be the hero of their own lives, that we're doing it together? People are not projects to be fixed. And I think a lot of times the church takes the stance that you're a project, I'm going to save you, we going to fix you. And that's not how community works. That's not how community heals. That's not how young people move forward in their life. And so being, again, it's we and us. It's all of us sitting at the table together. And I'm not here to tell a young person, you know, I've worked with a lot of gang involved youth, and, you know, I'm just like, he'll leave the gang when he's ready to leave the gang. I don't ask him to leave the gang. He has to, or she has to, in her heart, decide that piece. But I'm here to walk with you, whether you're ready or not. Let's figure out how to make this work. And so those that are closest to the problem are the answers to the solution, have the answers. So we need to be asking young people, how can I connect with your mom? How can I connect with your parents? What is it that you see for your future? What are your dreams and your ideas? Again, it's not they and them, it's we and us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the church. I think is what the church is supposed to be.
And then leveraging what you have in your church, like remembering that, again, there are the judges that are there. There are caseworkers that are there. There are mental health counselors that are there. There are program directors of youth organizations that are there. And all of these are contributors to a village for a young person. And when we have that we mentality that Amy talks about, then I think that changes our effectiveness, because we're not doing it alone. But you could have a mother in there whose child just went into a facility on Friday, and here is Sunday, and she's wondering what the heck is all her prayers at the altar is about that. And there's someone that's knowledgeable about what to do. All we need is the coordination to get them together. They might even be on the same road, but how are we doing whatever we need to do to get them involved and create those pathways? Because I do think a lot of churches are well intended, like we want to do that. We just need to find out where those opportunities are. And I think that's something that I think a lot of effective churches and organizations do well at.
Yeah.
Just one thing, Brother Crossan, I agree with you 100%. And we and within our church communities, we have to be careful what the we means.
Yeah.
I had an issue with my church where one of the things that I did coming in is I said, I want to do a community scholarship. We have this great scholarship fund where they give $2,000 to every kid in our congregation that graduates from high school and stuff. And I said, out of this big fund, they got thousands and thousands of dollars, and we only had a couple of kids graduating high school every year. I said, let's take $1,000 and give 2 kids from the local high school a scholarship. And we don't want to give it to this kid with the best grades. We want to give it to a kid who pulled himself up by the bootstraps over the last 2 years of his high school career and got himself or herself together and graduated. And they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it. They said, this money is for our kids. And I said, but they're all our kids. And I said, if you're just looking at the kids who walk through the door on Sunday as our kids, then we got a problem bigger than just that. So that's
right.
that. We have to we at a much larger scale than we often look at it as faith-based organizations. The second thing is 2 things that I was said. The C. Vernon Mason, the civil rights attorney, said something to me that stuck with me always when I first started working with young people. He said, young people don't care what you know, they just want to know that you care. That's that. And the other thing is that we have to stop asking young people what's wrong with them and ask them what happened to them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I hate having to cut this conversation short because this is so great, but we are unfortunately running right up against the time. So I just wanted to thank our 3 panelists for all of the things that they've been able to share today. And I hope that those listening understand that there's a real opportunity for them to get involved as advocates for youth and to take responsibility for their own role in their communities and as neighbors. So I want to just give a couple of thanks to the Annie E. Casey Foundation for being our funding granting partner that makes this possible, and is the reason that we've been able to continuously build every year onto our convenings and grow our education, our collaboration, and our ability to share and hopefully make progress for children and families in our communities. And thank you for the entire team and staff at CPJ who put so much work into making this happen. And then of course, all of our panelists. You will get a follow-up email today, or not today, you'll get a follow-up email afterwards that will have a recording of this webinar so you can come back and revisit the things that were talked about today, and we'll also include any extra resources. We have a toolkit that we made with Community Connections for Youth that's designed for faith leaders and faith-based organizations, Christians, to know how they can start partnering better and be more involved with the youth in their communities. So that link will be dropped in the chat and will also be shared in the follow-up email. But thank you everyone so much. We are so thankful that you were able to join us today. And please keep following along with CPJ to hear about what next will be happening in our juvenile justice work. Thank you all.